A lot of buzz right now about the Texans quarterback situation. Could they pass on a quarterback in next week's NFL draft? If so, maybe trading for 49ers quarterback Trey Lance is a possibility. Coming up on today's show, I'm going to break down the possibility of the Texans trading for Trey Lance. Of course, there's some members of the Texans coaching staff that were in San Francisco previously. Then I'm going to explain why the Texans are my number one trade destination for Lance. That's coming up on Texans Today right now. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be breaking down the latest news and rumors surrounding 49ers quarterback Trey Lance. Could he be on the move? The 49ers are reportedly fielding calls for the former first-round pick. He was the third overall pick in the 2021 draft. Less than 2 years later, they might be shopping him. Ian Rapoport tweeted this out this morning. Source says the 49ers have received inquiries from several teams looking into a potential trade for former number 3 pick quarterback Trey Lance. The conversations have been the result of San Francisco fielding the calls, not making them, with teams aware that Brock Purdy is likely the future starter. Now, before we get into more about this, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Help Chat Sports get to 331,000 subscribers. Need less than 400 more. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're watching this on Texans Today, subscribe to Texans Today as well for more Houston Texans news and rumors. So Trey Lance, this is not a huge shock that we're hearing that he could be on the move. It might have been a surprise a few weeks ago when Brock Purdy's health was a little bit more uncertain, but it's looking like Purdy's going to be ready early on in the season, if not before the season is set to begin, of course, recovering from that UCL injury that he suffered in the NFC Championship game. They also have Sam Darnold on this team as a backup quarterback. So apparently a lot of teams around the league believe that, hey, San Francisco, they're going to be going with Brock Purdy. Trey Lance, is he available? A lot of teams in need of quarterbacks that maybe are kind of unsure about some guys in the NFL draft that might be inquiring about Trey Lance. Ian Rapoport followed up that first tweet with this one. While no trade is imminent and the 49ers would almost certainly want to make sure Brock Purdy's rehab continues to go as smoothly as it's been going, the interest from other teams in Lance has been there. Taking a look at the career stats. And the thing with Trey Lance is, yeah, the potential's there, but he's certainly unproven. Just 4 career starts, 54.9% completion percentage, just under 800 passing yards, so roughly 200 passing yards per start, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks, 235 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown for the dual threat quarterback. Here's what the 49ers QB room looks like right now. So Brock Purdy, in less than a year, went from QB3 to QB1. They signed Sam Darnold this offseason. I think that if they shop Trey Lance, they'd certainly feel comfortable with Darnold, who looked pretty good in Carolina last year. They would feel comfortable with him being QB2. Jimmy Garoppolo has obviously departed for Las Vegas. So the 49ers quarterback room certainly interesting right now. Will Trey Lance get traded? What do you think? Go down in the comments section and predict it. Type Y for yes or type in for no down in the comments section. Again, the 49ers are apparently taking calls on the former first-round quarterback. And when I heard that earlier today from Ian Rapoport, there were 2 teams that immediately came to my mind. And the main reason being is their connection with Trey Lance. And I'll get to that in a second. But the 2 teams I thought of were the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans. And I believe the Houston Texans might be the front runners here to land Trey Lance in a possible trade, because there's recently been a lot of noise that the Texans won't take a quarterback at number 2 overall, which I think is pretty crazy, but that's been the speculation, that's been the rumor. GM Nick Caserio admitted the other day that his team has fielded calls about trading back from number 2 overall. So is trading for Trey Lance a possibility if the Texans are not sold on any quarterback outside of Bryce Young? Because Apparently, Bryce Young's really the only quarterback they're excited about. They're not sold on C.J. Stroud. They're not sold on Will Levis. They're not sold on Anthony Richardson. And they don't want to reach on a guy like maybe Hendon Hooker at number 2 overall. So it might make some sense here for the Texans to inquire about Trey Lance. And I fully expect them to reach out if they haven't already, because Ian Rapoport's saying that multiple teams have contacted the San Francisco 49ers. And another reason I think the Texans might make some sense here for Trey Lance is the connections with Houston. You have the new head coach, DeMeco Ryans. He came from San Francisco. He was the defensive coordinator the last 2 years in San Francisco. Not to mention the guy that DeMeco hired as his offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowik. He was the passing game coordinator in San Francisco last year, working directly with Trey Lance. So you have that San Francisco connection with the Houston Texans. And even before this tweet, this report from Ian Rapoport, the last couple of weeks, we've been thinking, man, if Trey Lance were to get moved, could the Texans inquire? I fully expect the Texans to be serious contenders here for quarterback Trey Lance if he gets moved. As we're breaking down the top 5 trade destinations here for Trey Lance, and number 1 on my list is the Houston Texans. Could Lance be H-Town bound? Because there's been a lot of rumors that Houston may not take a quarterback at number 2, or they might trade down. Head coach DeMeco Ryans obviously was in San Francisco as a defensive coordinator for the last 2 years. And then the guy he hired to be his OC, Bobby Slowik, was the passing game coordinator working directly with Trey Lance. So Trey Lance has some connections with that Houston Texans coaching staff. I do believe that the Texans are the top trade destination for Trey Lance, and they will make this trade to bring Trey Lance to the Houston Texans. I think it makes some sense if the Texans are not sold on any quarterback outside of Bryce Young, because right now the Texans have the number 2 overall pick. It looks like Bryce Young is going number 1 overall to Carolina. They're not sold on Stroud. They're not sold on any quarterbacks in this class outside of Young. They've talked about trading back. They've talked about maybe just drafting Will Anderson at 2 or Tyree Wilson. So I don't know what the Texans are going to do. But if it's true that they're not sold on any other quarterback outside of Young, and they know they're not going to get Young, then maybe they'll seriously look in to trading for Trey Lance. And I do believe the number 33 overall pick would be enough to land the former number 3 overall pick. Now, what should the Texans do? Should they draft a quarterback? I still lean toward drafting C.J. Stroud. Or should they trade for Trey Lance? Type D for draft a quarterback, or type T for trade for Trey Lance. Down in the comment section, go down and chime in. What should Houston do here in in the next week? So breaking down again the top 5 Trey Lance trade destinations. At number 5, the Minnesota Vikings. At number 4, the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 3, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then 2 AFC South rivals, I think, are going to separate themselves from the rest. Number 2, the Tennessee Titans. Rand Carthon, former 49ers executive. He is the GM in Tennessee. He drafted Trey Lance. And then former 49ers defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans, the new head coach in Houston. Bobby Slowik, the OC, worked with Trey Lance as well. I believe the Houston Texans are the number 1 trade destination for Trey Lance.